Hello everybody and welcome to my long-term owner review of the CFMOTO Papio SS. This is the 2025 model of the CFMOTO Papio SS. I've owned it for a couple of months now, put a couple hundred miles on it riding it around town, and it is finally time to share my thoughts and feelings with you. Today's review is going to be a little different than some of the other ones I've done in the past because I got a lot of really good questions from you guys on Instagram and TikTok and on the YouTube comments, so I'm going to do most of this review through your questions and kind of just go through pros and cons and what I think about the bike through that lens, because I thought that would be a little bit fun. If you want to see what the bike is like to ride around town, I did my first impressions test ride video. I'll link it in the description. I rode it around Baltimore for a couple hours and recorded my thoughts and feelings. It's a lot of fun to ride around town, so if you want to see that, go check that out. But with that being said, let's jump into the questions and my review. First question from Florida Man Reptiles. What's the MSRP on these? So the MSRP is $3,299 US, and so let's talk about value of the bike, right? This is priced pretty similarly to what a Grom is. I think a Grom is closer to $4,000. Out the door, I think you're gonna be at about $4,500 for this bike. Grom probably closer to $5,000 out the door, right? So you're getting a little bit better deal here with the CFMOTO, but I'll be honest, if you want a really good deal, try and find one of these used. So this bike is actually used. It only had a couple hundred miles when I picked it up, and I was able to get it for 2,500 bucks. This bike just isn't as well known as the Grom. It doesn't have the aftermarket that the Grom has, so you can just get it for a better deal because not as many people know about it, but they are also much harder to find. I had been looking on Facebook Marketplace and other spots for a couple of months before I found this one. So it's going to be harder to find, but I think you can get a better deal because Groms just hold their value so well. Basically buy it for a certain price used and you can probably sell it for the same price used. This, if you buy it used, you probably will lose more money on it than you would a Grom. So keep that in mind. Michael Hunt 3987 asked, how's the seat? Comfortable, roomy? So I'm a bigger guy, I'm about 5'11", 240 pounds. And yeah, the seat actually, surprisingly for me, is not bad. It's better than some seats on full-size motorcycles I found. Now, is it amazing? Am I gonna wanna sit on it for hours on end? No. You know, I have a pretty sensitive butt I've talked about in other videos because I have some back problems, definitely nothing to do with my weight. But surprisingly, this seat holds up pretty well. If you're sitting in kind of the right riding position, leaned a little bit forward, you have more of your weight kind of on your thighs and off of your behind, and I found that that actually made it more comfortable for me. So the seat for me gets a thumbs up. It's actually very comfortable. And I'll use this to talk about the ergonomics as well. The ergonomics on the bike are slightly more aggressive than a Grom, but I feel like for the amount of time that you're usually riding this kind of bike, like around town, running errands, just having fun and goofing around on it, I found it more than comfortable enough to, you know, the ergonomic seat situation to support what I was looking to do with it. Stock Ed6 asks, how fast is each gear? Because it's a 6-speed. That's a great question. And each gear is basically good for about 10 or 15 miles an hour, depending on where you pick it up. So first is 0 to 10, second is 10 to 20, third is 30 to 40, and so on. So you're really topping out in 6th gear at about 55, 60 miles an hour if you're going downhill. But that's plenty fast enough for this kind of bike and what you should be doing on it, in my opinion. I was cruising, you know, at 55, 56 miles an hour, again, 260 pounds, with a backpack on, carrying some stuff that I just went to the store to pick up. So if I can get up to that speed, I'm assuming that people smaller than me could get up to 60, 65 miles an hour on this bike in the right conditions. And honestly, I was kind of surprised because I've ridden other smaller displacement bikes, but I think having 6 gears really helps you out here with just the kind of speeds that you can get up to. You are going to be shifting a lot. As I said, it's about 10 miles per hour for each gear, but that's just kind of the reality you're dealing with here. DJ Murbear asks, they look super fun. What kind of MPG can you get out of that bad boy? So CFMOTO says that you can get anywhere from 80 to 100 miles per gallon depending on your rider weight and what you're carrying on the bike, and I find that to be pretty true. And that's just the reality with smaller displacement motorcycles, right? For a bigger bike like my, 1300 GS, it doesn't really matter what you're putting on it. Yes, to some extent you're going to lose some miles per gallon, but especially for a 100cc small bike like this, it's definitely going to affect it. I got 2 questions here from people asking about, being a bigger person and riding a small bike like this. So one is from Owlness Studio saying, I just saw it yesterday, I got on and I can't tell if I look funny on it, I'm 5'11". Josh asks, I'm 6'1" at 218 pounds, will I fits if I sits? So to answer both, you will look silly. You're gonna look like a cartoon bear on a bicycle at a circus type thing, but that's just kind of to be expected on a mini-moto if you're, you know, an above height, larger human being on this type of thing. But that also is kind of part of the fun of it for me. I like riding it around Baltimore and having people look at me like, what the f is this guy doing? I just get a kick out of it. I think it's funny. And I think the people being like, what the heck, are also getting a kick out of it. So yes, you will look silly. People will also think you look silly, and that's fun. I don't know, I kind of think it's fun. You will fit, you know, Josh at 6'1", 218 pounds. It depends on how long your legs are. So I actually have a very short inseam for somebody who's 5'11". My inseam is only about 29, maybe 30 inches. So at 6'1", if you're mostly legs, you're gonna have definitely a more severe bend in your knee, but I think you still might fit. I would definitely suggest going and just sitting on one in a showroom and see like how severe it is and if you could tolerate it for more than 15, 20 minutes at a time. But I think overall, will the bike hold you? Yes, it will hold you. All right, so last question here, but it's a pretty important one. Dr. Green Thumb asks, how does it feel on the road in traffic? Does it feel like a toy or a half-serious vehicle? And the answer is really both. Because this thing can get up to about 60 miles an hour, it does feel like kind of a serious vehicle. And when you are going that fast on this size of vehicle, it does remind you that it's a kind of a bit of a toy. You really feel the speed when you're on a bike this small going like that quickly, right? And I think it doesn't help that I am a bigger guy. Like when I'm going, you know, maybe triple digits on a 1300 GS around a racetrack, of course, it feels like nothing. It feels like I'm in a car going that speed. But on this, going 60, you feel the speed. It is, you know, you're like, oh right, this is a mini-moto. And I think the word mini does a lot of lifting with these size of bikes, right? Like the Grom or the Kawasaki. These kind of bikes fit into a really interesting segment, you know, that's aptly named called mini-moto in motorcycling. And I think the word mini really, it's a fun word, right? It's a little bit silly. And I think that kind of clues you into what it's like, because it does feel like a toy, but it's also kind of a serious vehicle. You use this basically like, you know, a small displacement CC scooter to ride around town and do little errands on, or to, you know, do Grubhub or whatever. Now, to be honest, I think if you are using it as like a work vehicle, like if you wanted to do delivery rides around a city, I think you should get a scooter. Because scooters have an automatic transmission and a more comfortable riding position, I think a scooter is going to just be easier than a Grom or a CFMOTO or the Kawasaki Z Pro, whatever. You know, every scooter is going to beat out those bikes for doing that type of work around a city. And I think if you're looking to do that, you're not really considering these vehicles. I think these are fun vehicles. They aren't purpose-driven vehicles. Now that being said, if this is your first motorcycle, I actually don't think this is a bad place to start. My reason for thinking that is, yes, this is not a full-size motorcycle, but my first, you know, foray into this, into my adult life, when I was younger originally, it was a moped. But then recently, when I got into motorcycling again, and when I was looking at getting my motorcycle endorsement, I got a scooter. And I was just riding around town on a ruckus. And it was a lot of fun, and I was like, oh man, I should get my endorsement so I can get a more powerful bike, right? So I can go further and see more things and do more. So I think if you have your motorcycle endorsement and you're afraid of a big, heavy bike, but you want to get practice riding around town, small rides, you know, shifting up and down, this and a Grom, I think, are fantastic first bikes because they're very not scary. You know, you're not going to be going that fast because you just can't go that fast. You're going to get practice shifting. You're going to get practice of just being on a motorcycle. And I think they have the added benefit is, let's say you want to upgrade to a bike that's better at touring or adventure riding or cruising. This is still a really good bike for around town purpose. It's a great second bike to have because it's just so easy to maintain and low cost that, you know, if you just want to pop over to the shops and get a couple of things, or you want to go out with your friends and practice wheelies in a parking lot, this is a great thing to do it on. And that's ultimately where my opinion lies on the CFMOTO and the other smaller displacement bikes. I think they're all excellent training vehicles. And I do want to really quickly discuss, you know, the comparison between this and the Grom or some other bikes. I think the reason you'd go for this over a Grom is because of its aesthetics. And I think the reason you'd go for the Grom over this is just because of the plethora of aftermarket support that the bike has. That's really going to determine, you know, which bike you get. And also the ergonomics. The guy who I bought this bike from basically rode a Grom and thought this was just a better looking Grom. But because the Grom has such a kind of bolt upright riding position, he did not like this because he didn't find it comfortable enough to ride around town. I disagree. I think it's totally fine for that, but you should sit on both the bikes before you figure out which one you want to pick. You really do feel like you're sitting on like a little mini sport bike with the CFMOTO, and the Grom feels more like a standard or naked bike. And in that vein, if you're interested in picking up this bike new, I think you should wait for the 2026 model at this point because it has full fairings. So this is basically a half fairing bike. It's actually almost closer to a naked bike, but definitely wait for the 2026 iteration. There's some new paint schemes, there's full fairings. It just looks that little bit even prettier. And if you're gonna buy it new, you might as well just wait at this point because that full fairing looks aces, looks great. But that's it. I really enjoyed my time with the CFMOTO. I'm actually probably going to be selling it soon to somebody because I actually picked up a dual sport that I've been using for off-roading, and I can also take it around town to run errands. So I just can't justify having another bike in the stable when I have something that can do the same thing. Again, it's no knock on this bike, it's just I have too many bikes and I am getting comments from my spouse about it, so this will be leaving my home soon. All right, everybody, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this informative or helpful, please hit subscribe or like the video. It would really help me out. I'm just getting started with motorcycles here on YouTube. I'm only at about 300 some odd subscribers, and I would like to hit 500 before the end of the year, so hit subscribe if you like this video. I've been putting out a different video every week on gear and bike reviews and test rides and all that great stuff. So if you'd like to see more of it, definitely come back next week and check it out. Until next time, peace, keep two wheels down. I'll see you later.